Okay, good afternoon. My name is Tashara Jones. I'm the treasurer of the City of St. Louis and also chair of the Parking Commission. Thank you for attending today's meeting. Give me 1 second to unmute the commissioners. Okay, Mrs. Ruchik, are you ready? I can't hear you. Your phone is muted. There you. Is that you? No. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Parking Commission to order on April 6, 2020. Ms. Ruchik, please call the roll.
The Honorable Tashara O. Jones.
Present.
Honorable Darlene Green. Honorable Jeffrey L. Boyd. Mr. Jamie Wilson. And Mr. Carl Phillips.
Present.
Okay, I just read that Alderman Boyd is on, but we can't hear him.
Okay.
Same thing with Mr. Jamie Wilson. Alderman Boyd is dialing in.
Okay.
Chairman Jones, do you see that Jamie Wilson needs you to unmute him?
No.
He's on cell phone number 706.
Okay. Okay. He's unmuted.
Thank you. Sorry for the hassle. I don't have a camera or microphone on my computer, so.
Yes.
No problem. And what phone number is Alderman Boyd calling from?
I don't see it in the chat yet. He did say about 2 minutes ago that he is dialing in.
You're very welcome. Have a good day. Stay safe.
Chairman Jones, 9201.
Okay, I see it. Okay.
Would you like me to recall the roll?
Please recall the roll. Thank you.
Honorable Tashara O. Jones.
Present.
The Honorable Darlene Green. The Honorable Jeffrey Boyd.
Present.
Mr. Jamie Wilson.
Here, present.
And Mr. Carl Phillips.
Present.
Okay. I believe that there was a meeting called on Friday, April 3rd. Are there minutes for that meeting available?
I'm having those transcribed and put into minutes so I can distribute those. So I will provide those. This is Jamie, by the way.
Okay. On to new business. First order new business is to review the budget for fiscal year 2021. At this point, I will share my screen with Michelle Smart, and she will present the budget for fiscal year 2021.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, Michelle, which spreadsheet are we starting with?
If you can put up the revenue spreadsheet, that'll be the first one.
Okay.
And before we start into the budget for 2021, just wanted to give a little bit of some insight as to how we got to 2021. I know that traditionally these budget meetings have always been the comparison of the current year's budget to the budget for the next fiscal year. But in light of the COVID-19 situation and all the different pieces that are moving right now, it is worth giving a little bit of color to the projection for the current fiscal year and how that has given some effect to the budget for next year. And wanted to give some insight as to how some of our decisions were made as we moved forward with trying to put this together. This is a very difficult time to budget because it is a constant moving target, as I'm sure all of you know. But what we did was kind of get two assumptions going on as it relates to what's currently happening and how it can springboard forward. We looked at two different projections, one being that all operations basically would be at a minimal or ceased through the month of April, resuming a normal status, whatever that normal, and again, that normal is a very loose term because it will take a while to get to a normal situation, but resuming that everything was at a minimal or stopped in April of 2020 and then moved into a normal in May. The second scenario involved that everything would be halted or minimal through May of 2020 and then resuming a normal in June of 2020. In light of some of the reports that are coming out, again, it's moving constantly, but we chose to project fiscal 2020 at scenario number 2. And what that means is basically we're reflecting a revenue reduction of about 15%. And that's revenue across the board, meters, tickets. Well, meters and tickets are basically at zero, but daily, monthly, event, and property rental come in and all together has an effect of about 15% reduction in the revenue. As far as expenditures are going, with that scenario number 2 for this current fiscal year, that would be about a 3% reduction in expenditures because our expenditures are pretty much held constant, but there are specific expenditures that relate to this situation, and that would be around event workers, event security, meter outsourcing, and the ticket processing and the tenant improvements. So with that being said, that was the springboard to then allow us to look at 2021. But I also want to talk a little bit about the fact that in this environment, there is a major concern about us being able to maintain our debt service coverage ratio, as well as our reserves. At the end of fiscal 19, and the audited numbers that were presented, We ended with a debt service coverage of 2.02, with 523 days basically of reserves on hand. Our bond indentures require us to have a debt service coverage of 1.35. So as you can see, at the end of fiscal 19, we were in a very good position. But given the fact that COVID-19 is literally reducing revenue on a daily basis, that is a concerning factor. The debt service coverage ratio is directly affected our rating, our Standard and Poor's rating, which, as you know, with our senior debt right now is an A rating, and with our subordinate debt is an A minus. Want to give you a little bit of insight to that, speaking to our financial advisor, Brandon Comer, who is also on the call and can also give some more insight. But in summation, wanted to read basically that if the current loss rates hold constant that we have involved in this scenario too, the parking division could possibly fall below required debt service coverage levels and be required to take actions outlined in the trust indenture to ensure coverage is met in the subsequent fiscal year. If loss rates hold constant, the parking division could have a net loss and therefore be required to utilize cash reserves. Standard & Poor's recent distributed report informing the transportation sector that most credits, which include St. Louis parking, have been placed on a negative outlook right now. The rating agency acknowledged that the strong liquidity usually maintained in this sector is suffering. And St. Louis parking was approximately, like I said, 523 days with cash on hand. At current loss rates, the parking division cash would be utilized and potentially be substantially reduced to levels that compromise the needed liquidity of the division to offset any future business interruption or weather a longer than expected rebound from this pandemic. So I wanted to make sure that that was stated. Brandon, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. No, I think you covered it. I just wanted to reiterate, the fact that based on the current daily loss rate, it is possible to trigger going below the 1.35 times debt service coverage, in this fiscal year. So in the event that happens, we'd have to take measures in order to ensure that on an annual basis, because you would utilize cash to offset it this year, but that is not a means of remedy as it relates to the next fiscal year. You can't budget in the reserves, even though you would be utilizing them to cover any offset. So you would actually have to take some action, relative to increasing revenues or reducing expenditures. But again, as Michelle stated, none of us have a crystal ball. However, if daily loss rates do continue, it is very possible to trigger that covenant before the end of this fiscal year.
Thanks, Brandon. So that being said, we can get into a little bit of discussion of the fiscal 21 budget that we have put together here in light of all of that situation. The revenue budget is up on the screen. You can, Madam Treasurer, you can switch back to revenue. That would be great. Thank you. So as it relates to the budget, the revenues as of right now, in comparison to last year, is down by 1.4 million. taking into consideration that even though our projected number 2 scenario in the 2020 projections say that things would be back to normal in June, again, that normal is not necessarily the complete norm, for lack of a better way of putting it. In this budget of 2021, there will be some time to get things ramped up again for this economy and for the events and the monthly parking and all of that to come back into fruition as people transition back into the workforce and so on and so forth. So we did, in our budget, we took a consideration that there would be probably a 7% decrease in revenue as things started to get back to the so-called regular position. So that is why you would see a reduction in revenue of $1,452,000. The majority of that, $1.3 million, would be related to getting things ramped back up. Other decreases, about another $72,000 a decrease, is due to just regular courses of business, which are centered more around some valet type services that we have in one of our garages in 7th and Pine. So that is how we have projected our revenue out. As it relates to expenditures, one of the things that we have put in place in this budget, and Madam Treasurer, you can switch to the expenditure one. Thank you. As it relates to expenditures, one of the decisions that we made is that we were going to hold our salaries constant. So there are no increases in this budget for salaries for fiscal 21. Our salaries are 44% of our budget, so it is the largest piece. And so that being said, that is how we also can help see ourselves get back into a positive position. We also are holding on the possibility of freezing any new hires that we have in this budget. This budget does not reflect that those positions are frozen. They reflect the full year of those positions, but that is also something that we will consider and take into account as we continue to look at the movement of how this situation affects our business.
Michelle, this is Jamie. Do you want us to save questions till after? I don't want to interrupt your flow or anything, so I can wait till later for sure. If you want us to say it as we go here, I will though.
I would prefer if we could table it to the end. That would be great.
For sure.
Thank you. So that being said, our expenditures right now in our salaries, personnel expenditures, you will see that there is an increase of $181,000. And that is basically because we are adding 3 FTEs. And then there's also the fact that the healthcare benefits that have been provided to us from the budget office is an increase of about $93,000 for next year. In addition to the salary expenditures, we are also reflecting about an $84,000 increase in supplies. And that is associated with the fact that in this environment with the COVID-19, we have done lots of cleaning and sterilizing, and it is our intention to continue to do those types of things going forward. And so we have increased our custodial supplies and equipment in our budget by about $25,000. We also have about $55,000 in this budget related to batteries needed for our single space meters. We are finding that we're needing to change those batteries out on a more regular basis. And in light of the fact that in this budget, we are reflecting the switch of the outsourcing of the meters and the PVB ticket processing from Conduent to Hudson and Associates. A lot of these things that were not direct expenses for us previously are now going to be direct because we are bringing certain things in-house. So that is why you see the battery packs showing up in this category. Also, in our equipment and improvement section, you see an increase of $205,000 there. That is being driven by the fact that, again, as we always have in our property leases through our management company, Gershman, in those individual leases, the tenants have the right to have particular tenant improvements made that are built in to their lease options. So we always budget for those. In addition, there are some items that are being carried over from fiscal 20 into fiscal 21 because of the fact that we are not able to do those projects due to COVID-19. There's about $80,000 of carryover going over into fiscal 21 for tenant improvements. Under contractual and other services, we are seeing a positive impact of $99,000. And that is mainly being driven by the fact of the new contract that we are finalizing through the RFP process that we launched and outsourcing the meters and the ticket processing. That outsourcing of that contract and absorbing in the ticket processing back-end system equates to about $555,000 in savings for us in next year. In addition to that, computer services, there are some direct expenses involved that bringing these types of services in the house create. And so we have computer services related to TrustWave, which is our PCI compliant type situation that we have to make sure that is in place, as well as camera maintenance type situations in the PVB facilities that increased our budget by about $20,000. We also will have additional AT&T services associated with the PEO, the new PEO handhelds that will be a part of this transition. That's about $31,000 increase for the year. We are also needing to ramp up more security, in particular around our City Hall and Kiel facilities and in the Couples facility as well. We are planning to implement some strategies with utilizing the sheriff's office for those types of things, but there is still an additional $125,000 in the budget for that. We have about $66,000 increase in professional fees associated with our property management company, Gershman, and commissions as it relates to negotiation on new leases. We also expect to have about a $22,000 increase in merchant fees associated with our credit card transactions continuing to increase, more people taking advantage of that option to pay by credit card, as well as adding event scanners into our mix, which before COVID-19 started, we had started testing event scanners to be able to take event money by credit card, as well as cash options. that we currently do, but trying to incorporate credit cards into that system. Unfortunately, everything is at a halt at the moment, but we do plan to get back into that for fiscal 21 and push that throughout our facilities, saying that would probably increase our merchant fees by about $22,000. Park mobile fees, our parking app that continues to be a favorite item out in the community. Those transactions will continue to increase, and we're looking for probably $111,000 increase for that. And our insurance cost, since we are putting, the security cameras into all of our facilities and making sure that we are able to monitor them at all times, that camera equipment needs to be covered insurance-wise. So we're starting to see a little bit of increase as it relates to that, as well as adding the cybersecurity insurance that we started this past fiscal. So that's about $45,000 increase there. If you look into the non-operating expenditure category, we are seeing about $145,000 increase there. The majority of that has to do with the fact that our bond debt schedule, as you know, and when we've refinanced in the beginning, you saw some, overall there's still a savings in what we did with refinancing, well over $2 million. But as the amortization schedule moves forward, the bond payments will start to grow a little bit. And so you will see a higher amount of bond payments going out. But again, the overall refinancing was still a win-win for us in terms of total present value savings. If there are any questions as it relates to revenue and expenditures, I can take them at this time before I go into the capital budget.
Yeah, this is Jamie. It was just, I was curious on the expenses related to personnel. I just want to make sure I understood what the assumptions were. Did we say we are not including raises for fiscal 21 for employees?
Yes, that is what we're doing.
What would that normally, on average, raises have accounted for as an additional expense over what we're seeing? I was just curious.
On average, you would see somewhere around 2 to 3%.
And this also assumes we're filling existing vacancies as well as adding the 3 FTEs.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
And it also assumes that the salary portion assumes that we are filling any existing vacancies. I don't know if you have any existing vacancies, but filling those obviously and paying them, as well as we're expanding by adding the 3 full-time equivalents. Is that right?
Yeah, as I was explaining, any open positions and any new positions are in the budget, but we are also expecting that we will probably put a freeze on that. And that is another option that we're holding as an opportunity to help to get us, get things back to a normal basis. But
Gotcha.
it is in the budget
Yeah.
right now. Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I completely agree. I was making sure I understood where we last left off with that. So I'm with you on that.
All right.
Okay, give me a second.
Any other questions as it relates to revenues and expenditures at this point?
Okay, give me a second. Looks like Commissioner Boyd has moved to a computer and needs to be unmuted. Give me 1 second to find him.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyd, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smart. What positions are we adding with the 3 FTEs?
We are moving 3 part-time positions to full-time, 1 at Kill Admin, 1 an IT analyst, and 1 a fleet assistant. But then there is an offset of, we added a deputy chief of staff position, but that was offsetted by the removal of a garage rover. So the impact was 0. But then we also have an additional staff accountant in the position, in the budget, which is being offset by the removal of a PR assistant as an employee moving into a 1099 contractual situation.
Why do we need to add a deputy chief of staff, and how much is that salary?
If you look at the detail that was provided to you on the salary report with all the titles, it will give you what that salary is. Do you have that report?
I do. I'm looking through it now. But tell me why we need to add that position.
This is Treasurer Jones. That position was added because our chief of staff needs some assistance, and we need to. He needs some help, so we added that position. We actually had it previously and just didn't fill it, so we're bringing that position back.
Okay, and we still have a parking administrator, right?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna have a parking administrator, a full-time chief of staff, and then a deputy chief of staff.
Correct.
Okay, Ms. Smart, tell me, maybe I missed it as you were going down the contractual and other services. Can we go back to new parking lot? And that's an increase of 111,000. Now, what is that?
Just 1 second. Okay, on the expenditure, new parking lot. Okay. In that account, 5790, the majority of that has to do with the Park mobile app. And again, I know that title is misleading, but 5790 and the 5790 series has always been reserved by the Comptroller's Office for outsourcing type expenditures associated with parking. The account title does not represent what's in there, but I have no power over changing the account title. I just know what the account is used for.
But shouldn't we have a account number that's inclusive of all the outsourced parking operation expenses?
It's 5790.
Okay, so you had mentioned earlier about we're bringing something in-house, and it's going to be a $83,000 increase in supplies, but that's relative to parking, outsourced of the parking, right?
The supplies of $84,000 has nothing to do with, well, okay, the part that I talked about in terms of bringing things in-house, the IPS batteries. Those types of expenses were not necessarily directly absorbed by us in the current contract under Conduent. Some of those were considered a part of what's called RMAs, but not all of them, but some of them were. RMAs are when you send something back for repair. And so as we move to this transition from Conduent to Hudson, when all of that is finalized, there are some direct expenses that you had not seen on our books before that will be there, just because it might have been rolled into a per meter or per ticket type processing fee instead of it being directly paid by us. So those are some of the changes that you're going to see. But overall, the transition itself is still a savings for us of at least $600,000.
But how does that help us in bringing those costs in-house? How does that help us?
Those costs are, it helps us because the major thing that we're bringing in-house is the ticket processing system itself. And that is a major thing that will help us to deal with that situation, that whole processing of itself, and to manage that system through our IT department. That's a major win for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Commissioner Wilson, any other questions?
No, I don't think it's questions. I was trying to do quick math, which I'm sure you guys already have, on trying to figure out how there's a way to cut something to give raises for folks. Granted, all these times are tough, and trying to take care of the personnel as best we can. But I'm sure you guys have sharpened the pencils on that one too as well.
Oh yeah, we've been around and around, and thank you for that. We've been we've tried to do everything that we could, but I will also remind you that several of our employees did get a raise last year, up to $15 or more when we made that move in the last fiscal year, and so that was a pretty hefty increase for some staff, and you know, none of us could have ever predicted what we are going through right now with this pandemic. So I think it's best for us to at least try to keep people employed and full-time at their full-time salaries. And if by chance we get an opportunity to do something different, then we'll bring that back to the table.
I'd completely agree with that. Thank you.
Michelle, where are we going next?
Capital. If there's no other questions, we can move on to capital.
Ms. Smart, actually, I'm still struggling to find the Deputy Chief of Staff position. Can you point me to the page it's on?
Yes, it would be on the third page from the back. So it's under the category called Parking Admin 343220.
Okay, and it starts with Executive Assistant.
Yes. And it's one of the positions in blue.
In blue, where it says, well, I printed mine in black and white. So is it the one that says Parking Administrator?
No, it's Deputy COS.
COS.
It will say COS?
Yes.
Deputy COS.
Deputy COS. Okay, I see it. 75,000. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we go to capital?
I'm good.
I'm good as well.
All right.
Okay, so on the capital, last year's budget, we had $1,360,000. And as we do every year, we expend against that. We are projected to spend against that of about $790,000 right now. So that leaves us a balance to roll over into the fiscal year 2021 of about $570,000. So beginning with that beginning as our base, then we start to look at what projects we have in place for the new fiscal year. As always, we look at our fleet and see what needs we have in that category. This year, we are seeing that we have a need of about $162,000 in fleet, but we have a balance right now of $264,000 that will be rolling over. So we're not adding any additional capital for fleet. We should be fine. And the meter equipment, as it relates to the transition of PVB and the meters, because of some of the functionality and the somewhat antiquated technology at the moment on our single meters, we are looking to replace those. And we have put some money in the budget to replace those, as well as to bring in spare parts and tools, because again, with us taking over the operations in-house on the ticket processing and the way that the contract is with the proposed new vendor, these types of expenditures will be directly paid by us. So we have spare parts and tools that we want to keep on hand for different things that happen to need repair on our on-street meters, as well as we need to upgrade the current meter base. And that includes our multi-space as well as our single meters, until we have the opportunity to switch out our single space meters, but they all need to be upgraded from a 2G network to a 4G, which will help tremendously in the time that it takes to write tickets and to be able to connect to the network. And we also will need to renew our extended warranty with Flowbird, which is our multi-space meters, because that is up for renewal now in this new contract environment. So we would need $1.3 million for all of those. We currently have $164,000 carryover, so we need $1,136,000 added to the capital budget for that. Our IT network, we have annual subscriptions on certain software, and we have annual upgrades that occur on our accounting software. So that will need an additional $51,000. And we also want to include some money in the budget specifically for some needs in 1621 Olive, which is where our PEO office is. We did quite a few renovations in the year 2020, different things that we discovered that they needed, want to continue to make sure that they stay on par. We also had to do some surface lot renovations this current year that we want to make sure we have money's in place to do those. Again, our bond funds would not cover anything of this nature because this is not related to the garage. So we have to make sure that our this capital budget allows us to make sure we can take care of any situations that arise to keep our facilities up to date and safe and secure. Couples budget, we always need to make sure we have money in couples budget. And as I explained last year with the Kimley Horn assessment that we had done a couple of years ago, which is a 10-year outlook of what our garages would need. Couples will always need to be reflected in this budget because couples bond funds cannot cover what couples needs to have. We have done quite a bit of work on couples thus far, and we'll continue to move against that Kimley Horn plan. And so we are going to add another 100,000 in there for that specifically. So we are asking for an additional $1,318,000 for a total budget for capital of $1,889,000. Any questions?
No questions for Jamie.
I have no questions.
Okay, Mrs. Smart, where are we going next?
That is basically the end.
Are there any other questions for Mrs. Smart on the budget?
Not from Jamie. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Again, this was just a review of the budget. We anticipate that there will be more questions as you've had an opportunity to digest some of the information. As always, feel free to, I'm sorry, I think Carl has a question and he's muted. Give me a second to unmute him. But as you have questions, feel free to reach out to either our Chief of Staff, Jared Boyd, or to Mrs. Smart to figure out or to let us know what your questions are.
I would like to just make a suggestion. It would be very helpful if Ms. Smart can do a budget summary, kind of, walking through all of this verbally is good, but if you can have it in writing, that would be helpful to be able to just go back, because sometimes it's hard to remember what you heard yesterday. For me, anyway.
No problem.
Thank you.
Carl, you have a question?
No, I was just trying to come off of mute. I'm fine.
Oh, okay. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is old business with the parking RFP. Jared Boyd, will you give us an update? He was unmuted. You're
Hello?
unmuted.
Can you hear me?
You're unmuted. There you go.
Hi, how are you? I thought we made significant progress with the city councilor's office, but they raised an issue this afternoon, so I will confer with them. But as I stated, I can't provide an update at this point without some conferral with the city councilor's office, even though we've been working through most of these issues since February. So I will follow up at the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, that is all that we have to review for this meeting. Again, this was just a review meeting for the budget. If you have any other questions after today's meeting, feel free to reach out to either Jared Boyd or Michelle Smart for any follow-up questions. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you everyone for joining us. And this meeting has been recorded for purposes of the minutes. And everybody stay safe out there and take care of each other. Thank you.
All right.